In the dying glow of a blood-red sunrise over the Belgian countryside, where mist curled around shattered trees like the ghosts of fallen soldiers. A squad of German tank commanders gathered around what remained of a Tiger I, one of the most feared machines on the battlefield. A steel monster that had shrugged off countless shells, rockets, and direct hits and. Yet this morning, as frost clung to its blackened frame, something impossible had happened. A single, clean, surgically precise hole had been punched straight through its armor, not blasted, not melted, not cracked, but pierced as if the Tiger's nearly 100mm steel had been nothing but soft paper. And the baffled commanders found themselves circling the wound like priests, examining a miracle or a curse. Because no enemy weapon they knew of, no anide gun, no anide tank round, no Sabah shell could have produced an impact like this. And already whispers spread among the men. Terrifying whispers of a new Allied weapon, a hidden technology. A ghost round that moved too fast to see and too quietly to hear. A weapon so secret that not even captured intelligence reports hinted at its existence. And the officer in charge, Hauptmann Richter, felt a cold sweat running down his neck as he leaned in closer, tracing the edges of the hole with trembling fingers, feeling not jagged metal, but smooth, polished steel, as if the shell had sliced through the armor with the precision of a master craftsman's blade. And that alone sent a shiver through every man who witnessed it, because Tigers were supposed to be invincible. Rolling fortresses, legendary for absorbing punishment that would tear lesser tanks apart. Yet this tank hadn't even been destroyed, it had been violated, as if the enemy's round had simply passed through it like a phantom, leaving destruction in its wake. But what truly plunged the commanders into dread wasn't the hole itself, but the fact that, according to the surviving crew, the hit came without warning, without flash, without sound. Merely a brief metallic whisper followed by a blast of internal heat that killed the gunner instantly, shattered instruments, and left the rest of the crew screaming in the dark. And as they retold the moment, their voices trembling with fear, they spoke of something even more bizarre. The shell never slowed down, punching through the Tiger, the ammunition rack, and the engine block before exiting the rear armor with the same impossible clean cut, vanishing into the fog like some demonic projectile that obeyed no known laws of physics, ballistics, or warfare. And as rumors spread, senior German officers ordered immediate secrecy, commanding the crew to remain silent, forbidding any mention of the incident in reports, and pulling Richter aside for a private briefing, in which he was told something even more unnerving, that the High Command had already received 3 similar reports from the Eastern Front, from Italy, and from Normandy. But each report was more confusing than the last, because witnesses described the shell as invisible, silent, or glowing faintly, like a shard of lightning. And though no 2 accounts matched perfectly, one detail remained consistent across every battlefield. The Allied weapon responsible for these so-called ghost rounds left no shell fragments, no casings, and no chemical residue. Only the unmistakable mark of a round that did not behave like metal or fire, but like a force of nature itself. And the German engineers who examined the destroyed Tiger grew pale as they realized the worst truth of all: whatever had hit the tank did not deform, explode, or ricochet, meaning it carried an energy far beyond conventional munitions. And if the Allies had truly developed such a weapon, then the armor superiority of Germany's heavy tank Tigers, Panthers, even the experimental King Tiger, was no longer guaranteed. And this horrifying possibility made Richter's pulse hammer in his throat as he stared into the dark hole again, feeling as if he were staring into the eye of something not mechanical, not human, but predatory. A weapon designed not just to destroy, but to terrify. And yet, despite all of this, despite the fear crawling under their skin, the German commanders knew that one question mattered more than any other. The question that echoed through their minds like a drum beat, growing louder and louder in the cold morning air. What kind of weapon could slice through a Tiger tank as effortlessly as a knife cuts through butter? And why had the Allies never used it openly? Was it experimental? Was it unstable? Was it too secret to reveal? Or more frightening still, was it being saved for something bigger? something catastrophic, something the Germans had not yet seen. As Richter gazed across the frozen fields, watching distant American patrols move ghost-like through the fog, he felt a horrible realization settling in his bones. This ghost round wasn't an accident, wasn't a fluke, wasn't the work of a lucky shot. It was a message, a demonstration, a warning of a weapon that could rewrite the rules of armored warfare, a weapon the Germans had no defense against. And as the first winter wind swept across the field, carrying with it the faint echo of far-off artillery, Richter found himself asking the question no German soldier was prepared to ask: if the Allies had a shell that ignored armor, what else were they hiding? And with that chilling thought gripping the camp like an iron fist, the suspense deepened, leaving every commander with one final haunting mystery that would drive the rest of the investigation. Was this ghost round man-made, or something far stranger? The moment the story begins, imagine the camera dropping directly into the shattered steel jungle of World War II battlefields, where the legendary German Tiger tank, feared, invincible, wrapped in meters of hardened armor, seemed like a mechanical god of war, a beast that no shell, no cannon, no Allied weapon was supposed to penetrate. And yet one strange, impossible, almost supernatural event began circulating among frontline troops, a rumor so bizarre that German officers refused to write it in reports, a mysterious ghost round, projectile that did not ricochet, did not explode, and did not behave like any known weapon of that era, slicing straight through Tiger armor as if the steel were soft clay, leaving crews terrified and commanders speechless. And as the story spread, whispers grew: was it a new Allied superweapon? A captured experimental device? A malfunction that created a freak accident? Or something even stranger? Something that defied physics and military logic altogether? Because this wasn't just a tank being destroyed, it was a tank being erased. Its armor punctured so cleanly that it looked like someone had drilled through it in a workshop, and German intelligence officers rushed to the scene, trying to make sense of what they saw, measuring the hole, examining the alloy, attempting to reconstruct the angle of impact. But nothing matched, nothing aligned with any known Allied gun, and the psychological impact was immediate. If one Tiger could be killed like this, then any Tiger could be killed like this. Meaning the symbol of Nazi battlefield dominance was suddenly vulnerable in a way no one imagined possible. Here's where the real hook begins. Because the surviving Tiger crewmen who witnessed it described the sound not as a cannon shot, but as a whisper. A thin, cutting shriek that lasted less than a second, and by the time they turned their heads, the shell had already passed through one wall of armor, through the fighting compartment, through the opposite hull plate, and continued flying into the landscape like a phantom bullet refusing to stop, as if it were fired by an invisible sniper with impossible strength. And this bizarre event triggered an emergency chain of investigations deep within the German high command, who were terrified of one thing: not just that the Allies were developing stronger weapons, but that they had developed something the Germans did not understand, something unpredictable, something unstoppable, something that rendered their prized Tigers meaningless. And so the story you're about to hear is not just about tanks and shells, but about fear spreading through the ranks, scientists scrambling to solve a mystery, commanders refusing to sleep until they found answers, and frontline soldiers beginning to believe the battlefield itself had turned against them. Yet the deeper we go into this mystery, the stranger it becomes. Because the more evidence experts gathered, the more the ghost round contradicted traditional ballistics, engineering principles, and wartime logic, setting the stage for one of the most baffling and least known incidents of World War II. And as we move through this video, 6 points, each digging deeper into the origins, the reactions, the investigations, the theories, and the final classified conclusions, you will understand why so many officers were left speechless, why crews abandoned tanks out of pure fear, and why some historians believe this was not just an accident of physics, but a moment in history when technology outpaced understanding and created a weapon effect so shocking that even today it raises questions no one can answer. And now that the hook has pulled you in, let's move further into the battlefield, into the minds of the terrified crews, and into the secret files the German High Command never wanted the world to see. Because the truth behind the ghost round is far more chilling than anything you expect. And as the scene unfolds deeper, imagine German recovery crews approaching the crippled tiger with a mix of disbelief and dread, their boots crunching over shattered debris while officers barked orders that betrayed a tension they tried desperately to hide. Because what stood before them wasn't the aftermath of a normal tank engagement. It was something that looked almost surgical. A perfect cylindrical wound punched through armor that normally required multiple direct hits from high-velocity guns to even crack, and the engineers couldn't understand how a single round had carved through the tiger's thick front plate, one of the most fearsome and resilient pieces of yeet armor ever built, as easily as a hot knife gliding through wax. And the closer they looked, the more disturbing the details became. The interior metal wasn't ripped or twisted like in normal penetrations, but smoothed, polished, almost melted yet not melted, as if intense heat had been present without any sign of burning. An impossibility the metallurgists refused to even discuss in front of the enlisted men. And as these experts examined the other side of the hull where the projectile exited, the mystery deepened further because the exit hole was nearly the same size as the entry. Another impossibility for any known shell at the time, since even the most advanced armor-piercing rounds tended to expand, fragment, or destabilize after impact. Yet this one retained its shape, its velocity, and its direction, passing straight through the tank as though the laws of physics had taken a brief break from reality. Among the crew who had survived, the trauma was written across their faces. Trembling hands, blank stares. Uniforms still soaked in sweat and grime as they recounted how the round moved so fast they didn't hear traditional boom or impact shock, only a thin, needle-like hiss that felt more like something slicing air than metal. And several swore they felt a pressure wave rush through the compartment. Not an explosion, not heat, but an unnatural force that pushed against their chests like a sudden vacuum collapsing inward, leaving them gasping and disoriented. And as these testimonies spread across the division, soldiers began whispering that the Allies had discovered a weapon capable of bending reality itself. And when German High Command received the initial reports, their reaction was immediate and frantic. Because they knew that if such a weapon existed and could be mass-produced, the Tiger, once the symbol of unstoppable German engineering, would become a liability. A death trap for its own crews, and so special investigative teams were assembled under secret orders. Men who understood ballistics, metallurgy, and classified weapons programs, and they descended upon the site with measuring tools, cameras, sketchbooks, and sealed metal containers to preserve fragments. But even they could not agree on what they were looking at. And the more they tried to explain the physics behind the penetration, the more tangled their theories became, ranging from ultra-high-velocity Sabot rounds to experimental magnetic projectiles to impossible claims about warped airflow dynamics at extreme speeds. And while these experts argued among themselves, the frontline troops were losing their composure. Because once the idea took hold that the Allies had a silent, unstoppable ghost round, morale began to break in subtle but dangerous ways. Stank crews slept in shifts inside their vehicles, refusing to step outside even to eat. Mechanics examined armor plates for microscopic cracks, as if expecting them to shatter at any moment. Patrols reported hearing strange whistling sounds at night that sent them scrambling for cover, convinced that the mysterious projectile had returned. And even officers known for their iron discipline began speaking in hushed voices, acknowledging that they had no explanation, no countermeasure, no training to prepare their men against a weapon that moved too fast to see, too quiet to predict, too devastating to survive. And in the midst of this rising panic, one young officer discovered something that made the entire situation even more terrifying. Because when he examined the interior of the Tiger's turret, he found a thin line etched into the steel line, perfectly straight, perfectly smooth, and perfectly aligned with the path of the projectile, as though the shell left behind a signature of its passage, not through explosive force, but through some unknown cutting effect that none of the experts could replicate. And this discovery triggered immediate fear among the investigative team, who realized that what they were witnessing might not just be an exceptionally lucky shot or an experimental Allied weapon, but something fundamentally new. A breakthrough that the Germans were completely unprepared to counter. And as this classified information traveled upward through the military chain, reaching commanders who understood the stakes of technological escalation, they ordered all reports sealed, all witnesses silenced, and all physical evidence transported under armed guard to special facilities. Because the implications were too dangerous to allow rumors to spread, yet unknown to the German high command. The truth behind the ghost round was even stranger, even more unpredictable, and tied to a battlefield moment so unusual that even the Allied soldiers involved struggled to understand what they had fired, why it behaved the way it did, and how one freak combination of physics, materials, and timing created one of the most baffling events of the entire war. And as we move into the next point, the story will drag you deeper into the unexplained mechanics of the shot, the psychological shockwaves it sent through both armies, and the classified experiments that followed as both sides scrambled to understand whether the ghost round was a miracle, a flaw of engineering, or a terrifying glimpse into a possible future of warfare that neither side was prepared to face. And now, as we reach the final point of this unbelievable story, everything converges into a single chilling reality that neither the German high command nor the Allied forces were prepared to confront. Because while the investigations, the theories, the metallurgical examinations, and the frantic battlefield interrogations all attempted to explain the ghost round scientifically, the truth is that what came next only deepened the mystery and raised even more unanswerable questions. For when the Germans finally attempted to recreate the event using their own high-velocity experimental cannons, they failed miserably. Every test shell shattered, ricocheted, or embedded unevenly, proving definitively that their technology simply could not produce the effect they had witnessed. And this realization forced the German intelligence community to confront the one possibility they feared more than Allied innovation: that the ghost round was not created intentionally, not designed, not part of any known Allied project, but instead was the product of a rare freak alignment of battlefield elements: velocity, temperature, material fatigue, angle, aerodynamics, and sheer chaos that produced a once-in-a-war phenomenon. A perfect anomaly that could not be replicated or predicted. A weapon born out of accident rather than invention. And this revelation terrified them because accidents cannot be countered, cannot be measured, cannot be defended against, meaning any future tank, no matter how thick its armor, could be killed by another unpredictable alignment of physics. And so the Germans buried the report deep in classified archives, hoping the incident would never repeat. But history has a way of refusing to stay quiet, and months later, a strange dossier surfaced on the Allied side, as well as a report from a group of American gunners who had been reviewing battlefield footage and noticed a streak, a faint blur, a barely visible line of motion that seemed far faster than their shell's rated velocity. And although they didn't know it, the blur matched perfectly with the mathematical estimates German scientists had made in secret. The ghost round had moved faster than even the Allied crew understood. And when American engineers attempted to analyze the film, they too were baffled, proposing wild theories ranging from unstable propellant compression to microfractures in the shell, casing two ultra-dense projectile cores that might have formed accidentally during manufacturing. But none of these explanations fully accounted for the perfectly smooth penetration, the lack of fragmentation, the straight-line exit trajectory, or the strange energy signature inside the tank that crewmen felt but could not describe. And as both sides failed to explain the impossible weapon they had witnessed, the story faded quietly from official records, existing only in the whispered memories of soldiers who never forgot the sound, the fear, the moment their understanding of battlefield reality was shattered by something that should not have existed, something that made even the greatest beasts of war tanks feel fragile and mortal. And here, in the closing minute of the video, imagine the scene slowing, the camera pulling back from the shattered Tiger hull, panning across scorched earth and smoking wreckage, and then drifting upward, toward the sky as a narrator asks the one question no historian, number scientist, no veteran has ever been able to answer. If this ghost round was truly an accident, a 1 in a billion miracle of physics, Then how do we explain the classified Allied report discovered decades later describing a second, nearly identical incident in another theater of war? An event so similar that even the exit wound measurements matched within millimeters, suggesting that maybe, just maybe, the ghost round wasn't a freak occurrence after all, but the first glimpse of a hidden pattern, a secret phenomenon lurking beneath the surface of wartime physics, waiting for the perfect conditions to appear again. And as the screen fades to black, the viewer is left wondering, was this mystery round a forgotten precursor to future Sabah technology? A lucky battlefield accident, or a classified breakthrough someone has erased from the history books? And if the truth is still hidden somewhere in sealed archives, what else might be waiting to be uncovered? What other ghost weapons might have existed? Fired once, witnessed once, and then lost forever in the fog of war, leaving us with only the chilling possibility that the battlefield holds secrets far stranger than anything we think we know.